Today I'd like to show you 6 really awesome essential licks based around the very popular natural minor scale. All of today's licks are based on individual and very interesting concepts. And yes, you're also allowed to steal them for your own music. So let's start shredding right away. So the first lick I'd like to show you today revolves around the B minor scale. It's quite short, but it features hammer-ons and pull-offs, hybrid picking and string skipping. So there's a lot going on in there, let's check it out in detail. So this lick is obviously based around a theme concerning the hammer-on and pull-off pattern across the B and the G string. We're starting out with a picked note, F sharp here on the 7th fret on the B string, and then hammer on to G, pull off, back to F sharp, so the first pattern is... And the second pattern is pretty much the exact opposite. We start with the higher note, E in that case, on the 9th fret on the G string, then pull off and then hammer on. So at first it's hammer on, pull off, and then pull off, hammer on. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. It feels pretty logical to turn this into a lick in triplets. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And the reason why I'm working with hybrid picking right here, so with my middle finger aside from my pick, is because of the string skipping we have in there. So at one point we're jumping between the G and E string, and that's a pretty big jump. There's one string in between, the B string, and we don't want to touch that one. And it's a little bit easier to do that when you assign the pick to the G string and your middle finger to the high E string. And I'm also using my middle finger for the last notes, just to give that phrase a bit more attack and style. This is something I really like to experiment with. And one last detail that makes the transitions a bit easier with my picking is that I use an upstroke after every stroke with my middle finger. So I start out by down picking, then right here I already have my first upstroke, and then instead of down picking all the next notes, I'm using my middle finger. So let's listen to lick number 1 once again, played at the original tempo. The second lick I'd like to show you today is a bit longer and more melodic. This time we're working in the key of C minor, and we're starting with a really nice melody, bringing out those chord tones of the C minor chord. And the second half features some really cool alternate picking, so there's some shredding in there as well. By the way, and as always, you can download the tabs, guitar profiles and backing tracks for all of these licks on patreon.com/BERNTH. I upload these really helpful files for every single video that I post here on YouTube. So if you want to make the most amount of guitar progress in the shortest amount of time with these videos, I highly suggest joining us over there in the shred guitar community. So for the first part of the second lick, I want to play a really cool melodic line that should remind you of this sound without even hearing the chord. Played in the background, that was a C minor chord. And to play a really cool melodic line right here, I want to avoid starting with the root of the chord or the perfect fifth. I want to pick some more interesting notes to make it stand out. So I'm starting my lick with a slide to the major second D before I go to the minor third E flat. So those are the first two notes. On the 5th and 6th fret of the A string, and I'm sliding into the first one, into D. And then instead of just playing the next notes of the scale or even jumping into full shred mode right away, so I'm jumping to the G string instead, just briefly playing the root C, then immediately moving up to D once again, so I get this really cool sound. So essentially I'm adding the 9th and end up with this really cool sound over the C minor chord. And then I'm actually just working with this exact chord voicing or shape because I like it so much. You don't always just have to stick to using your favorite chord shapes as chords. You can also dissect them into single notes, of course, and turn them into arpeggios, and that's what I'm doing for the second half of the melody. So I'm basically thinking in this chord shape that I like a lot, and I'm playing the single notes right here. So the first melody phrase sounds something like that. And then for the second half, I'm introducing a really cool alternate picking theme in the C minor scale, just a basic shred lick. Maybe you can remember the groups of 7 we looked at when it comes to alternate picking exercises. So I'm playing odd note groupings actually. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. So that makes it a bit more interesting than just playing 3-note per string shapes up and down when you work with odd note groupings like that. So let's listen to the second lick in C minor in context once again. Please notice the 6-4 measure that moves into a 4-4 measure. That's also quite interesting. By the way, I know that I'm repeating myself, but I'm not making this up. Still around 70% of you guys and girls watching these videos are not subscribed to this channel yet. That is a pretty crazy statistic, and it also means that you keep missing a lot of videos. So if you're not subscribed and not a real part of this guitar community yet, make sure to change that right now. By subscribing today, you will stay on track from now on, and that will hopefully have a huge impact on your guitar progress. The third lick I'd like to show you today is based around the sweep picking technique and around the key of E minor. I basically started my sweep picking journey with those 3-string arpeggios. So this is a great starting point for you in case you want to start working with sweep picking licks in your music or in your improvised takes. Let's see how that one sounds like. So with this one we are not individually picking the strings like with the previous example with the alternate picking run. We're focusing on one connected fluid motion that is actually quite similar to arpeggiating a chord. So it's not that kind of approach where you're essentially picking the strings individually and have a motion like that. It's much more like smooth motion like that where you're arpeggiating a chord. And this is actually a great way of starting out with that, because it kind of feels like letting your pick fall, and gravity does most of the work right here, so you're not really pushing like that. It's a very small motion, and to start out with that you could just let the notes overlap in the beginning and play like that a little bit. That's the exact motion that you want to go for. And then, of course, the tricky part is separating those notes, so you don't want any overlapping notes right here. And one final detail, I'm not just hammering on those last notes of the arpeggio, I'm actually using an upstroke for these to kind of bring them out a little bit more. And I'm also trying to just use a little bit of rubato for those notes. It's a bit difficult because they move so fast. So I'm not just hammering on like that. Instead of that, I'm using an upstroke for the final note. So I'm only using downstrokes, but an upstroke for the final note. So that makes it a bit easier to really bring out those notes. And at the end, you're bending from F sharp to G and from D to E. Let's check out this really cool sweep picking arpeggio lick, once again performed in the original tempo. Now we are switching to a different playing style once again for lick number 4. This one is based on the very fluid sound of hybrid picking and legato playing. So there's not a lot of picking going on in there. I'm mostly using my middle finger for this lick in A minor. So this one is obviously a really great workout for your left hand, and we're moving down on the neck so that we play around this area as well, which is really important. So that's the basic idea behind that one, this kind of really cool fluid scale run. And as you could see, I'm not really using my pick with that one. I was only picking once, the first note with a downstroke, and the rest are just hammer-ons and pull-offs, and I'm once again using my middle finger. Maybe you can see it a bit better when I play like this. So a lot of action with the middle finger going on right here. When you work on this one, make sure to start out very slow and to focus on every single note. I basically started working on my left hand technique, like really working on my left hand technique and on legato and hammer-ons and pull-offs last year. So I know that it's really tedious at the beginning not to hit all the other strings with your pull-off motion, for example, and not just kind of losing notes or missing notes in there because you can't make them sound yet. So just a couple of quick tips when it comes to this playing style before we move on. It's very beneficial to place your thumb behind your fingers, behind the middle finger actually, like that, to get the most amount of support for your hammer-ons and pull-offs. You want to make sure to have that nice kind of snapping motion, and that only works when you're not playing like this with the flat fingers that we discussed quite often on the channel already. And please make sure to practice this to a metronome, because timing is probably the most difficult aspect of all of this. Because if you're like me, you're used to playing in time with alternate picking and with your right hand kind of dictating the note spacing and all of that. And right here, your left hand is doing all of the work, or your fretting hand. Let's do something different once again for lick number 5. This one is focused on the alternate picking approach. And to add something new to the table with this lick, we're also including some chromatic notes in there. So for the following lick, I'm essentially visualizing the D minor scale, but I'm filling up those holes within the scale with chromatic notes. This easy trick can spice up your guitar solos and improvise takes quite a lot. Let's check it out in detail. So now we are working in the key of D minor, and I'm once again working with this very, very common scale shape. But to make it a bit more interesting and not to just play the scale up and down, I'm filling up those holes within those 3-note per string scale positions with chromatic notes, so with completely wrong notes that have nothing to do with the D minor scale. So this one is definitely for you in case you want to work on your alternate picking skills. It's a great workout for your practice routine as well, aside from being a pretty cool lick and idea. And maybe I can inspire you to work with more chromatic notes in your licks. It's kind of uncommon in rock and metal music, and I would love to hear that more often. We're sadly running out of time for today's episode, so let's check out lick number 5 performed at the original tempo once again before we move to the final lick. Let's do something new once again for the final lick. This time we're working with tapping, and I'm also including some chromatic notes once again to make this one more interesting. So for this one I'm combining a bunch of topics that we talked about today, and I'm adding something new in the form of tapping. I'm working with hammer-ons and pull-offs. I'm working with chromatic notes, and the new element, as I said, is tapping right here, A on the 17th fret on the high E string. So that's the main idea of this lick, and it sounds pretty crazy. When I'm moving up to the tapped note, I'm once again playing that chromatic line based around those notes of the E minor scale, E, F sharp and G. But I'm adding F on the 13th fret of the high E string right here. And then of course after tapping, I move my way down this chromatic phrase once again. So once you get all the notes to ring in there, you end up with a really, really crazy and climactic lick for your solos. Make sure to tag me on Instagram or on any other social media platform in case you're posting your own takes. That would be really awesome. As always, I would love to check out your versions of those licks as well. In the end, make sure to subscribe to finally join this guitar community so that you never miss another video like that one again. Leave a like in case you enjoyed that one, that really helps me out, and a comment in case you have any further questions about all of this. I will hopefully see you again in the next video. All the best and have a lot of fun practicing. Until then.